Today, I'm recommending a rather dark Western film. The movie doesn't have a clear line between good and evil. Whether someone's an angel or a devil depends entirely on a single thought. The director magnifies the darkness and hypocrisy of human nature through the lens, delivering a bone-chilling portrayal of the American West in the last century. Chaotic, bloody, and absurd in its moral dilemmas. The story begins with a group of ruthless bandits robbing a bank. They fire wildly, ignoring the desperate pleas for mercy. Leading the charge, Henry is the first to mount his horse. As cries for mercy echo through the streets, the bandits ride off one by one. Only after the gunfire dies down do the town's lawmen dare to step out, firing their pistols helplessly at the fleeing outlaws. Furious, the sheriff orders his deputies with rifles to aim and shoot them dead. After taking ages to aim, they only manage a single shot, which luckily hits one of the younger bandits, but it does nothing to slow their escape. In the shootout, a government official newly transferred from another county is killed, and he happens to be the sheriff's close friend. Determined to catch them at any cost, the sheriff raises the bounty to an unprecedented $8,000 and specifically calls upon the famed bounty hunter Josiah to lead the chase. Despite the outlaw's brutality being well known, such a hefty reward still draws brave men. Josiah sets off with several assistants. Following the trail, the bloodstains left behind make it clear to him that one wounded outlaw has already died, and due to their rush, his comrades wouldn't have had time to bury him, so Josiah sends some men to locate the body. Since even a severed head can earn part of the bounty, he himself continues the pursuit with 3 or 4 men. Meanwhile, Henry, still on the run with his remaining 3 companions, reaches a dry riverbed where they meet an elderly couple, relatives who have come to supply the fugitives. The old woman clearly despises their criminal lifestyle and doesn't hold back her sharp-tongued criticism. The old man, though aged, still carries the spirit of a wandering outlaw, and he suddenly slaps his wife. Back then, women in the West held low social status, but this common behavior still angered Henry. He steps forward and grabs the old man by the throat, threatening to gut him if he ever hits his wife again. Their companions quickly step in to de-escalate, and Henry shoves the old man aside, picks up the supplies, and prepares to leave on horseback. The old man then gets up and suggests they flee east through the desert. Henry doesn't understand why take such a deadly path. The old man reveals the $8,000 bounty on their heads, saying heading east might help them escape capture. Realizing the truth, Henry reluctantly accepts the suggestion, but now that there's a bounty, things have become more complicated. The old woman is terrified, finally realizing these young men are ruthless killers. She repents and begs for mercy, then cautiously turns to leave when Henry doesn't shoot. Henry doesn't kill women but his obedient companion, Joe, is another story. Charlie, who's annoyed, reminds them that this old couple is his actual family, but Henry simply says that $8,000 is enough for anyone to betray blood ties. Charlie doesn't argue further. No matter how close, family can only complain so much. The 4 ride eastward, crossing the desert under the blazing sun. Lack of water causes them to lose their horses. Now, their heavy gold coins have become a burden for these thirsty, exhausted outlaws. One of them is already delirious, rambling about the future to stay conscious, but eventually collapses from exhaustion. The remaining 3 show no concern for their fallen comrade. Henry suggests putting a bullet in him to end his suffering, but Charlie calls it a waste. Henry's real concern is that if someone rescues the man, their whereabouts might be exposed, so he coldly gives the order. Farther ahead lies a small farm beside a chapel. Preacher George is teaching his 2 daughters how to use a revolver. The older daughter, Charlotte, keeps missing her shots. The younger one, Florence, casually fires and hits the wooden target. Her father's praise drives Charlotte into a jealous rage. While he goes to the shed for more bullets, Charlotte walks over, hits her sister hard, yanks her by the hair, and sticks her fingers down her throat until she vomits, then smears the vomit on her. But when she sees her father coming back, she acts as if nothing happened. Florence stays quiet at first, but when she takes the revolver again, she points it directly at Charlotte's head, her eyes full of rage like she truly wants to shoot. But with their father nearby, she lowers the gun and pretends she was just joking. These disturbing scenes are only a glimpse into this family's twisted daily life. That evening, George lies in bed with a pensive look, takes a swig of whiskey, and rests quietly. Their mother, who is cooking outside, sends Florence inside to massage her father. Florence clearly doesn't want to, but Charlotte volunteers. Charlotte is always trying to compete with her sister, but this time, Florence is happy to let her, yet their mother insists it's Florence's turn. At dinner, Charlotte mocks Florence with filthy insults. Their mother slams the table to shut her up. Ada, the mother, is a devout Christian and insists everyone prays before eating. Right after the prayer, as Florence begins eating, Ada suddenly feels inspired and makes everyone stop again to listen to her read scripture. Florence is frustrated. By the time Ada finishes reading, Florence has lost her appetite. Just then, the horse outside whinnies. George prepares to check, but before he can open the door, 3 bandits break in. They seize all the guns in the house, force the family into a corner, and sit at the table eating their food. They even find the whiskey hidden in the bedroom and drink to their heart's content. Charlie, slicking back his hair, eyes Ada with interest. Ada pats her lap and calls him over, saying she has a treasure to show him. Terrified, Ada tries to plead with him in Jesus' name, hoping he'll be decent. But Charlie, who kills without blinking, is unfazed by such words. Henry steps in, ordering Charlie not to harass a woman of faith, then casually suggests he go for Charlotte instead. He asks if Charlotte is married. George, under pressure, admits neither daughter is married and that the older one is infertile due to childhood fever. He adds that Florence has just turned 15 and pleads for Henry to show mercy. But of all people, Henry is drawn to the beautiful Florence. Seeing his daughter's chastity in danger, George rises to resist. Charlie smashes his nose without hesitation and throws Florence into Henry's arms. Florence, realizing there's no escape, proposes Henry at least wash off the sweat from his journey first. At the river, she watches Henry in the moonlight with a curious, unreadable expression, part admiration, part scheming. Then she joins him in the water, and they bathe together. Her family can't understand her sudden change, assuming she's trying to protect them. Back at the house, Henry orders Joe to take Charlotte outside to stand guard but warns him not to do anything inappropriate. Charlie stays in the living room watching the parents, while Henry takes Florence into a room for a more private moment. Florence shows no fear now. In the room, she watches Henry closely, but turns away as he removes his pants. When he lies down, she starts massaging him skillfully, but her bold touch surprises Henry. Though a killer, Henry respects women and doesn't want Florence to do this out of fear. But Florence leans in again, and Henry stops her once more. Then he realizes she isn't trying to please him, she genuinely believes this is what a massage entails. Henry tells her that if he ever wanted to be with her, it would be in a proper way, not in a moment that feels forced or wrong. They then share an emotional connection and fall asleep in each other's arms. Outside, Joe sits in a rocking chair while Charlotte fidgets nervously across from him. But Joe, ever loyal to Henry, doesn't plan to do anything bad. Inside, Charlie eyes Ada lying beside her husband and starts plotting. Sensing his gaze, Ada meets his eyes. As Charlie approaches, she looks scared but says nothing to stop him. George, not really asleep, turns away and silently permits this horrific act. That night, it's Ada, the most religious in the house, who ends up committing the worst sin in silence. At dawn, Joe wakes Charlotte, and the two return inside. Charlie, passed out like a pig in a chair, is jolted awake by Joe banging on the table. Ada sees her eldest daughter unharmed and doesn't react with panic like before. The bandits discuss leaving. This family seems to have survived the ordeal, but just as they turn, their startled Florence steps out in cowboy gear, looking heroic and unrecognizable from the timid girl she was. Henry follows, coming his men. They announce they'll be getting married at the next chapel, leaving everyone stunned. Charlie suspects Florence is fooling them. The family thinks Henry has manipulated their naive daughter. Ada clutches her Bible and urges Henry to do the right thing, earning only his mockery. He now sees clearly how bizarre this family truly is. George is in disbelief, begging his daughter not to sacrifice herself to protect them. Florence pulls a gun on him, ordering him to shut up. Her sudden move shocks everyone. Charlie excitedly watches the drama unfold. Florence's face is full of rage as she threatens to blow her father's brains out. Just as she's about to pull the trigger, Henry stops her and says he has a better way. He then asks everyone to sit around the table, and looks at Florence, asking which of the things they discussed she wants to do first. A bullet went straight through Charlotte's neck, and she collapsed against the wall, sliding to the ground. George looked like he was going insane, while Ada rushed over in a panic to check on her. Florence, who had fired the shot, snapped back to reality and hurried over to her sister, who was convulsing on the floor, apologizing that she never meant to make her suffer this much. Her original plan had been to shoot straight through Charlotte's head, suppressing the pain on her face. Florence stood up and returned to Henry's side. Ada was nearly hysterical, murmuring verses from the Bible non-stop, and not even Henry's drawn gun could shut her up. It wasn't until Charlie threw an egg at her that she regained some sense. George, as a preacher, also rambled on about judgment and hell, prompting Henry to tell him to shut up because the real judgment was just beginning for this man who should have gone to hell long ago. After telling Joe to drag Charlotte's body away, Henry asked why the eldest daughter was infertile. George insisted once again that it was because she had a high fever as a child. But Henry, running out of patience, raised his revolver. Joe and Charlie, who had just returned, glared at George threateningly. Under pressure, George finally admitted that Charlotte had become pregnant at the age of 11. He claimed it was the work of a demon that had possessed him and the influence of alcohol that clouded his mind. To cover up the shame, he performed the abortion himself, which led to Charlotte's infertility. But he now believed the demon had left him, and that he was once again a normal father. Henry wasn't satisfied with that answer and continued to mercilessly expose the hypocrisy of this so-called man of God. Getting more furious, Henry stepped behind George, removed his suspenders, and slammed him face down onto the table. He yanked down George's pants, pressed the revolver to his head, and called Joe over. He wanted this beast of a father to understand what it felt like to be violated. Charlie was shocked, unable to believe what he was hearing. Henry told him to take Florence and Ada outside for now. Joe also hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but he always obeyed Henry after a long pause. He finally prepared himself. Even in such a short time, George's mind was already tortured. He begged for mercy, pleading with Henry to just shoot him quickly. Gone was the man who had once blamed all his sins on demons. Henry was pleased with the result and told Joe to stop. His plan had only been to scare George, though that didn't mean he was going to let him off easy. Under Henry's orders, Charlie brought the mother and daughter back inside. With Henry's permission, Florence walked over to the corner, picked up a hunting rifle, and stood in front of her father. She didn't choose the quick way out with a bullet. She flipped the rifle and smashed it into George, knocking him to the ground. Then she hit him twice more, brutally disfiguring his face. The sight of this made Ada faint on the spot, and even Florence herself began to feel sick and started vomiting. Henry rushed to comfort her, and then pulled out his revolver, offering to finish the job for his fiancée, but Florence refused. Years of suppressed rage had made her determined to finish this herself. Charlie, a hardened outlaw, now looked at her with full admiration. He eagerly approached to advise Florence on which parts of the body to target for maximum pain, and where to strike last for a clean kill. The three bandits then quietly stepped back, watching Florence unleash a storm of blood-soaked vengeance on her father. She looked tormented, yet manic, releasing years of anguish caused by her twisted family. Even when George had long stopped breathing, she couldn't bring herself to stop. Eventually, Henry stepped in and pulled her into his arms, finally calming this 15-year-old girl. Then Charlie suddenly asked Florence a question. "Why did you kill your sister?" After answering, a single tear rolled down the girl's cheek, but there was something else hidden behind her eyes, something she hadn't said. As for her mother, Ada, Florence chose not to kill her. Henry didn't want his bride to carry too much blood on her hands. Still, since police and bounty hunters would surely come, Henry left Ada a large sack of gold as hush money, then gave her a firm warning before Florence said her goodbyes. After they left, the devout Christian mother loosened her grip on the Bible and clutched that ill-gotten gold to her chest. She then wandered to the chapel and sat blankly outside. From the distance, two bounty hunters approached. It was Josiah and his assistant, the men sent to hunt down the outlaws. Because they had prepared well, they still had their horses. Now it was just the two of them. Earlier on the trail, they had found the bodies of the elderly couple and a little girl hiding in the woods. She was the couple's granddaughter and had been hiding there ever since the gunfire scared away their horses. She told Josiah that the bandits had fled east. The desert ahead discouraged many in their group, and Josiah had to punch one coward in the face and send him, along with the girl, to the nearest town. Josiah and one loyal assistant continued the chase. They crossed the desert, with Josiah sharpening his axe along the way, vowing to chop off the outlaw's hands. He was determined to claim that massive bounty. But that night while camping, even his only assistant started losing resolve. Josiah tried to calm him with firm words. Now the two had reached the chapel. Josiah approached Ada, hoping to get some information from her, but she was still lost in shock and completely unresponsive. Frustrated, Josiah stepped aside with his assistant. Though once unwavering, Josiah now began to have doubts. He felt the trail had gone cold, but the assistant believed they could still catch the bandits if they headed toward Mexico. Oddly, Josiah said he was too exhausted and convinced his partner to leave. Once the assistant was gone, Josiah slowly returned to Ada, confirming again that she didn't respond. He then reached for her skirt. Earlier, he had noticed the sack of gold behind her. That's why he sent the assistant away. He fondled the bag, delighted, and took the whole thing, trying to hide his excitement as he turned to leave. But at that moment, Ada suddenly opened her eyes and fired 2 shots at Josiah. He gasped and reached for his revolver, trying to shoot back, but he pulled the trigger on 2 empty chambers. His greed and hypocrisy had led to his death. Ada screamed at first, then broke into a crazed smile. In that moment, this pious Christian mother looked no different from a demon from hell. Though the bounty hunters had fallen apart, the outlaws were still fated to die. They rode south toward Mexico, and after half a day's journey, they finally reached the border, the sight of the sparkling river, the bag of gold, and the freedom that lay just beyond made the world look like paradise. Charlie and Joe went to wash up by the river, while Henry pulled Florence aside to exchange sweet words and share a kiss. Florence said she could never thank him enough, but Henry told her there was plenty of time ahead for that. What he didn't know was that the girl had already made another plan. She shot Henry, then turned her gun on the others. Charlie was killed instantly by the first bullet, and though Joe was mortally wounded, he still managed to fight back. But Florence's gun ran out of bullets. At that moment, Henry, who hadn't drawn his revolver before, fired a shot into Joe's chest. Joe looked confused, but didn't have the strength to ask why. Florence turned to Henry in shock. Realizing he had truly loved her, she quietly explained the reason behind her decision. Henry didn't seem surprised. He'd seen too many betrayals over money. He gazed at her tenderly, nodded, and gave her a look of acceptance. He didn't want the girl to carry guilt, so he raised his revolver and ended his own life. Florence wept by the river for a long time. Maybe she had chosen this bloody path long ago, but Henry's final act softened her hate-filled heart. She knelt beside his body and kissed this outlaw who, to her, felt like an angel. Then, she wiped her tears, took an axe from a horse saddle, and walked over to Charlie's body. She tested the blade, braced herself, then swung it down, severing his head. Next, she approached Joe, and this time, she didn't hesitate. When she came to Henry's body, she paused for a moment, but only a moment before she brought the axe down. She hung all 3 bloody heads on her saddle, mounted her horse, and galloped back toward the path they came from. She was going back to kill her mother. Ada, asleep by the fireplace, woke to find her daughter seated in front of her, staring. When she realized her mother was awake, Florence's first move was to take the revolver from beside her. As if she had expected this, Ada didn't react. She let Florence take the gun and the sack of gold. Then Florence slowly raised the revolver at her mother. After firing a blank, she muttered something strange. George had told her to always load 1 fewer bullet to avoid accidents. Henry once said someone shot himself in the groin and lost the ability to father children. The man Henry was talking about was himself, because he couldn't satisfy a woman the usual way. He was always especially gentle with them. Maybe he was trying to make up for his own flaw. Florence had figured this out while spending time with him, and she realized that if she stayed with him, she'd be constantly on the run. They could never live a normal life. So she chose to kill Henry for the bounty and build a future of her own. Her final act, killing her mother, was partly because Ada had stood by and done nothing her whole life, and partly to tie up all the loose ends. I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.